Hello there, Oak Bloke here, and this is a video covering Molten Ventures. So I'm recording this on the 13th of July. None of this is advice. You make your own investment decisions. This is my Substack blog, if you don't know. That's at oakbloke.substack.com. And there are something in the region of 700 articles now at my blog. Let me give you the exact number just because I'm sad like that. It is currently at 636. There we go, not quite 700. 636 articles, quite a few relating to Molten Ventures. There's not a new article that I've written yet, but I thought I'd record this video just a couple of reasons really. As you can see here, I've talked about one of Molten Ventures Holdings, Revolut, back last year. Spoke about it more recently in Vive la Revolut. And of course, there's other aspects around Molten Ventures. You know, the takeover of Forward Ventures, yeah, just kind of looking at some of the opportunities at its holdings. So I'm not going to kind of go through those in any great detail today, but I'm going to sort of touch back to this article, which is my latest. So in this article, I was pretty much just saying that yeah, that I could see there being quite a lot of exciting upside. The reason being that um, yeah, that whilst they're still at the time of writing this article in April, that obviously this was not long after Trump Liberation Day and all I think it's fair to say the stock markets were in an interesting place. So if we go back 6 months, this is sort of when I wrote the article. So having gone up to £3.50 post Liberation Day, it dropped to what, £2. I can't remember what it went down to, but yeah, so it sort of went down to £2.34 at a low point, which like I was all over that. I must admit, like when Lib Day happened, I was like, yes, there's this whole thing about tariffs and so on, but a lot of these companies are technology companies. I mean, they're not affected because they're not sending goods and services. I mean, when you look at the list of the list of companies, sorry, I've got the list ready to show you, but you've got sort of a lot of service-based businesses, a lot of businesses that aren't necessarily doing trade or a lot of trade with the US, or if they are, it's on a service basis. I felt as well that there was a good chance that, I mean, you can sort of, yes, you can threaten tariffs, but you can't tariff the whole world. So I was convinced that a free trade, with its allies, Japan, UK, was what I said back last in April, that there would be a deal done. And of course, since then there has been, which yeah, it was to be expected because you can't alienate the entire world. You can alienate part of it, and of course the chief alien in this whole scenario is China, so as far as US is concerned. So anyway, I felt very bullish about and this, so sometimes that you've just got to kind of analyze what's going on and take a decision in faith, despite detractors saying, "Oh, what you're doing, like, oh, it's all going to go horribly wrong for you." Maybe, but that, like, a lot of the time, people rationalize the fact that something's going to go wrong is the share price is down. Now, like, this is sort of like, share prices are driven by emotion, they're driven by sentiment. They're not, the it's a voting machine. The stock market is a voting machine in the short term, and in the long term, it's a weighing machine. So I'm weighing up, as far as I'm concerned, I'm weighing up the shares. I am making assumptions when I'm doing my weighing, that I'm making extrapolations on what will happen in the future. But back when it was dropped down to £2.30, when you look at who these companies are and what they've achieved, I mean, particularly what I was looking at the time was Revolut had released their 2024 results, and I was looking at it going, well, like this is fantastic. The like I sort of said here, this is like having a wadi in the desert. Like if you're stood out in the desert and some detractors whispering in your ear saying, oh, just give up, like, you got it wrong, oak bloke. Well, what have I got wrong here? Because they've gone from 38 million customers to 52 and a half. And I was looking at tracking Revolut, and they were at 50 million in sort of November. So what I saw when I saw the annual report was like, well, gosh, like they've added 2.5 million from when they announced 50 million in mid-November. So they've kind of added 2.5 million customers in about 7 weeks. Um, I was just like, what? Like, and this, I can buy this, or because you're not obviously buying Revolut directly, you're buying it indirectly via Molten Ventures, and also I did a separate video on INOV. So you're buying it indirectly. It's one of the holdings, and you're just buying a small slice of Revolut. But when I say small slice, I mean it's not that small. We'll get into how big or small it is in a second. But the transaction volumes are up 52% compared to the year before. They're now at 1 trillion pounds. I mean, I'm just going cha-ching, cha-ching, and this is just my personal opinion. I mean, you make your own investment decisions, but when revenue's up, they've turned profitable. They're on a PE now. Admittedly, they're on a very high price earnings. I mean, I tend to go after value, so obviously people might say to me, "Oh, how can you justify that as being good value?" Well, okay, but if it can grow profits in 2025 by 130% like they did in 2024, well, that price earnings of 43 drops to 18. And if they do the same in 2026, then the price earnings drops to 8. So, and this is based on a $45 billion valuation, which, of course, since I wrote this article, Molten Ventures have released their 2025, so the results to 31st of March 2025, and said, yeah, we're happy to value this, because obviously they have to go through rules, and like it's something called fair value, so they can't just sort of make up numbers. Those numbers have got to pass scrutiny. There's got to be some basis for those numbers, but they also upgraded their valuation of Revolut. So here in the annual report, if you go and have a look at, there's quite a nice little slide thing, but I mean I can show it to you in this bit here. It's not quite as visual, but a fair value movement of 98.8 million on a 65 million pound share. You can see that, like, that's massive, isn't it? And that was simply because they were valuing it at I think, sorry, I haven't got the number to hand, but it was something like a $23 billion valuation. I was like, well, how are you valuing something at half its price when there are shareholders, oh, sorry, there are employees? There was a secondary sale last year where it was being sold it was shares and ownership of Revolut were changing hands at 45 billion. I was like, well, there's people buying it at 45 billion valuation. There's stupendous results. I mean, it's not as though this is sort of like a cross your fingers because maybe one day it'll make a profit. Well, no, they're making a profit. They're growing fast. They're and just little things like, well, when you look at the number of downloads, and this is in my article, that when you have a look at the number of downloads, it's number one or number two across pretty much every country of Europe. And the basis for, well, why won't it continue to do well would be, oh, well, surely, it's not possible. Well, why is it not possible? Oh, well, because the share price is down. Well, that, the share price is down for me isn't a fact. That's just an opinion. It's the opinion of the market based upon sentiment. So, and at the time, sentiment post Trump, like what's going to happen with all these tariffs? Um, and obviously now we've kind of tacoed, or I say tacky. Trump always caves in. Taco being Trump always chickens out. You choose your acronym. I prefer the British one. Tacky, tacky Trump. Uh, Kind of has a ring to it. I don't know why I think that, but anyway. So this whole thing of like, oh, we're going to slam you with tariffs. Are you? Crack on. Oh, actually, we've changed our mind. We're not going to slam you with tariffs after all. We've changed our minds. Oh, okay. Thanks for that. Cheers. It's lost its sting. The threat has lost its credibility because the Chinese stared them down and said, "Yeah, go on, do it." Like the Americans were like, oh, hang on a minute. Like we need your materials. We can't tariff you on these things uh, because we need these materials. We can't, our economies are dependent on each other. We can't afford to tariff you because that will disrupt our own economy, our own industry. So they've extended, they've sort of changed their mind on what was it, 140% tariffs. Anyway, this isn't a political video. I've got no interest in talking about politics with anybody. I don't have any political opinions. I'm just looking at it from the point of view of investment. That is the only sort of, I've got no opinion about whether Trump is good or bad or whatever. Couldn't care less. Not interested. But yeah, certainly, I looked at Revolut and was like, well, this is going places. So even a 45 billion valuation is kind of, is a matter of time until, like I say, by the end of 2026, if they're on a price earnings of 8 times, well, it's not going to be valued at 45 billion anymore. It's going to be valued, you know, like based upon its future prospects in 2027, 2028, which might be 65 billion. There we go. So anyway, the upside, I've been doing a little bit of maths, and just whilst we're going at this, I mean, the other thing to say is that having covered an article for all the upsides that happened in the first half of the year, obviously these fair value movements down here, so this 50 million increase to the portfolio value, if we contrast that with what was going on in first half of the year, so let's just stick these two things side by side. So you can sort of see here, like the point in my, I think it was called the article called growling opportunities. But like what I said in that article, and it's only when you sort of draw this stuff out a little bit that you can see the wood for the trees. But like what I was saying was, well, at the half year, like virtually all of their losses, like the headlines were, oh, Molten Venture loses money. Where I was looking at it was Molten Ventures had quite a lot of adverse foreign exchange, which I suspect will reverse to some extent in the second half. Well, yeah, absolutely. You can see that that's happened there. Foreign exchange 21.6. So, in other words, it's reversed itself by about 9 million in the second half. Now, the dollar, of course, is very weak, or certainly, let's rephrase that. The dollar is weaker than it has historically been. It's currently at 136 to the pound. It's at what, 111 to the euro, something like that. So there is quite a bit of like, could that carry on? Could that even get any worse? Could we end up, well, when I say worse, could the dollar go to 150 to the pound possibly? Again, I'm no FX expert. I've got no. I do think, on the law of Big Mac index, that's the one I tend to go by, that America is starting to look a bit cheaper than it did. A Big Mac in the US versus a Big Mac in the UK. Historically, the US was always a lot cheaper than the UK for their Big Macs. So it's about parity now. So if the dollar went to 150 or 160 or 170 or $2 to the pound, I mean, the Big Mac index would start to sort of say, no, that's getting a bit silly now, because you can buy a Big Mac over there for £4, whereas in Britain, you don't get much change out of what, seven or £8. And that's just a silly way. Well, I say it's a silly way. The economists do it, so it's not that silly. But I think, just picking a product which you can buy in both countries, you can get a sense for like whether an exchange rate's overvalued or undervalued. And if you've followed my frequent articles about Japan, you'll know that I'm a big fan of, the yen just being at silly prices. The fact that you can buy a Big Mac meal, you could literally take your pounds, turn them into yen, and buy a Big Mac meal for about £3.60, I think is the current price. But at one point, you could buy a Big Mac meal for £3.20, and I was like, well, that's just ridiculous. That's like going back to the 1980s and buying a Big Mac meal in Britain. Like you couldn't do that today, because inflation of costs and value of money. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about sort of worrying about FX, I tend to just go on constant currency, but also sort of just say, like things that go down will go up, that it'll come out in the wash. The thing that interested me more was stuff like the obviously these values here were what they were investing and what they were realizing. So realizations are things they've sold off. So those are sort of reductions from the portfolio as opposed to gains and losses. Obviously the gains and losses is that number there. So they lost 20 million overall from what they sold, which is quite a high number. The sort of realizations 127 million, and then the movement there of 30. So in other words, they sort of lost another 9 million on the extra 50 that they sold in the second half. Now, to my mind, pro rata, that's a lot less. That the losses have decreased in the second half, and in any case, those realizations relative to the share price. I mean, uh, the share price being £3.50. It's about 500 million, I think. Let's double check that. So sorry, apologies, 633 million. And in fact, thinking about it, I've got it in this article anyway. Here I've got market caps at oh, that doesn't look right. There we go. It's at 630 million. That's the up-to-date accurate one. And you can see here, this is where I've sort of looked at the fair value movements in the second half. So this is for the full year, but a fair value movement of 72 million. So in other words, we're saying, it's returned about 11% in the year, net of those losses. So net of that 30 million loss, where they were sort of getting rid of stuff that wasn't working out, they disposing of stuff. And sometimes when you're sort of trying to raise lots of cash, when you're a bit of a forced seller, not that they particularly were, but to some extent they were, because they were obviously looking to prove out the portfolio. That, I mean, really the underlying number there is 100 million, which on that is now then a 15%, with sort of this being a sort of a one-off stuff that. So in other words, the underlying growth is at 15%, but they've had to take a hit on some stuff that's not worked out, which obviously nets to about 11%. So kind of ignoring the foreign exchange element, like, to me, this is the important column to focus in on. And what you'll see is that this growth here of 98.8 million, as I say, was based around the fact that this is now valued at its 45 billion valuation, as opposed to this one back here. But the interesting news, and the reason for this video, was to say that there's an article that places Revolut at a potential 65 billion valuation, and this is based upon the fact that they're in talks, hasn't happened yet, but they're in talks to raise $1 billion of further funding. Okay, if that goes ahead, I'm not saying it will. If that goes ahead, then that would be worth 38.7 pence to every grower. That it would be a 70 million upside to that 157 million. and that would be equal to 11%, 11.1% on today's share price. Excuse me, frog. Um, uh, um, and that's my throat, not my nationality. So that's kind of the news. Is that and actually the other thing to say is that the NAV is 684, but factor that in, and you're then looking at sort of £7.20 thereabouts, and the discount. Therefore, I think we've got a slight malfunction going on with my discount calculation there, but obviously £7.20 kind of takes it above 50% discount once again. So it's interesting that obviously the official number is that the discount is fast closing. I think this chart on this broker site, for example, would tell you that the discount has dropped below 50%. Well, obviously these numbers are always sort of a little bit suspect, but I would say, on the basis that Revolut is uh, uh, on the basis that Revolut goes ahead and that 65 billion deal goes ahead, well, it's not below 50 at all. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, but that would take you back to sort of about here. So yeah, positive news, and you can sort of see there's a slow. Obviously, this was the re-rate of the well. Yeah, again, I think some of this is a bit suspect in terms of the accuracy of it. So it says 671, and I say 684, and that's sort of based upon now the difference would be, of course, is that there are buybacks going on. So this is based upon the buybacks and the shares being at 180 million, which of course is a boost to the share. That's the other reason that these numbers will be inaccurate, is that it's not taking into account the buybacks that are going on, which of course are being done at about 50% discount to NAV. So may they long continue, because what that will do is dramatically increase the share price. So I mean, the final thing to say is that obviously underlying 100 million, which and the other thing that I would point out is that taking like Thought Machine, Avon as sort of, those are the ones that were losing money. Well, Avon's not lost any money in the second half, actually. Um, it's actually gone from 8.3 to 8. Well, it has lost. It's lost zero point 0.1. So there's a bit of a rounding error on that one in terms of loss. But whilst Thought Machine sort of shows as having lost money, it was at 35.8 at the first half. So it's actually gained 6 million in the second half. It's just that overall for the year it's lost 29. But that's actually a positive to take from the full year results. And everything else pretty much is going up. And I'll sort of point out as well, at the half year, Revolut was up 62. So the full year number of 98, I mean, that is actually only a 38 or 36, sorry, million increase in the second half. So it was just a slight final thing as well. Sorry, I've forgotten to sort of mention this, but as I say, when you split out like all of the gains, all of the losses, a very different picture starts to emerge. So what this does is it goes back over 5 years. So back in 2021, oh sorry, 4 years, 4 years of gains. So you can sort of see in the good times, in a year it will sort of gain equivalent to its market cap, which is incredible. Now, are we going to see a sort of another 2021 in 2025, 2026? I don't know specifically. Could do. I mean, if Revolut's growing from 45 to 65, could Thought Machine take off? I'm very positive about that. I do talk about it in the article, so I'm not going to sort of cover it in this video particularly, but Thought Machine I'm very positive about. There's others as well that I could sort of start talking about, but what you see is even in like really bad years, obviously this being a bad year, there's still stuff gaining, and actually, sort of when you look at that over the sort of 4 years, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, when I say that's 4.5 years of results that you see in there. So, I mean, if you take that number, divide that by 4.5, I mean, in terms of upside that it's generating sort of what, 40% of its own market cap on average for the last 4.5 years, and that's uh, yeah, that's over 4.5 years. So that would be 265 per financial year on average of upsides. Now, obviously, there's downsides as well, but let's sort of do the same calculation there. There's 161 minus of downsides. So what we're saying is that, even taking into account the bad years, you're getting 100 million net upsides over taken over 4.5 years, which on a 600 million or 630 million valuation, I mean, again, that's about 16%. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, yes, there's then a bit of FX, like I said before. You've got to sort of like take a view on that and maybe consider it just noise, but on average, that's dropping over 4.5 years, dropping valuations by 11 million per year on average. But I mean, to me, that is very encouraging just to see that alone. Yes, there were some, and bear in mind, I mean, some of these, stinkers, and you can sort of see them down here. That I mean, and these were sort of what I did was I took shares that were sort of kicking around back in 2020. So obviously it's sort of trying to sort of these numbers don't exactly model together and tally together, because this isn't the entire portfolio, because we don't get disclosures on everything that Molten Ventures hold. We just get like a top 20, I think they do. So what I was able to do though was to try and sort of say, well, let's try and do a 4.5 years or 5 years in the life of, and just say like, well, what were they bought for, or what were they valued at? Yeah, sorry, what were they valued at back in 2020? So 5 years ago, what were they valued at? So this is in pounds million, just to be clear. Um, what are they valued at today? So again, that's sort of based upon the latest results now these ones here are not valued anything today because Graphical's been disposed of. Well, you can see it there under the realization column. So some of these were realized for a profit. Some of them, well, one of them was realized for a loss. Some of them are still being held, but are sort of held at a loss, which is my understanding that Kazoo remains valued at 1 million. Now that may have changed. Smava, I'm not sure what that is, but that was kicking around back then. That's still around, but it's dropped. And some of these, by the way, I think if they've dropped below the top 20, what I've had to do is just take the last known valuation. So that actually might be lower than 13, and that one might be 0. It's just that they're now below the radar. So, and Molten Ventures don't tell us what's happened to them. Those numbers might be hidden away in some of that minus 30 there, for example. This stuff here remaining is the stuff that's off the radar, off the can't be analyzed. But for the stuff that can, I mean, you can see there's lots and lots of realizations that were realized at a profit. Lots of them where they are at an upside today, like net of all the losses. These ones that I could track have gained 380 million over 5 years. So again, the ones that are sort of named holdings over 5 years have overall gained 380 million. So they're doing something right, is what I'm saying here. Is that, like, from what you can see, they're certainly getting some that are providing upside and consistently. Anyway, that's enough from me. I hope that's been a useful. I can see there's 3 likes in the so far. So yeah, if you like these videos, do like them, do subscribe, usual stuff. and tell your friends about it. Uh, it's always good to be talking to larger audiences than smaller audiences. And if this stuff isn't interesting or useful, well, I'm sure the chatosphere will very quickly say that, and I won't bother to do it anymore, and that'll be the end of it. So, but yeah, look, I mean, it's hopefully providing a perspective on why I think Molten Ventures will do well, and why like for me, even at £3.50, I still see it as like really good value. Now, obviously, if you did follow my idea and buy it at £2.30 and you sat there on a 50% gain, it's always hard to up to average up. Sorry, I was trying to think of the words. To average up. Averaging up is harder than averaging down. Psychologically, it's harder because averaging down, you feel like, oh, I'm going to sort of, make good my losses. And this is one of the real big sort of investment fallacies is people will chase and worry about their losses far more than worry about their gains. So it's I'll leave you with the little wisdom of water your plants, don't water your weeds. Uh, you know, trim your weeds and don't trim your flowers, I think is the saying. And that's kind of what I'm saying here is like speaking personally. Obviously, you make your own investment decisions, but speaking personally, averaging up, I don't have a problem of doing this because not only do I see upside happening at Revolut, but I could see it happening at other holdings. And maybe I'll probably write an article talking about the full year results. The full year results are, that I've sort of touched on very briefly here. But as I say, there's some nice direction that things are going in as far as I have concluded so far. Anyway, that's enough from me. That's Oak Bloke signing off. Cheerio for now. Cheerio.